Hey, Alice.
Alice is just logging in.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay, I just changed her to the host and I see her, she's still off, her sound is still off.
She needs to record to her computer.
Oh, should I put it to record to the cloud?
Oh, you already did it? Okay, as long as you know how
Yeah.
to get it.
I set it up to record to the cloud.
Okay, good. And you know how to transfer that to the people that may not be able to make it?
Not yet, but I will.
Okay.
Figure it out.
I
You'll
recorded
figure
it
it out.
to the cloud once and I had a hard time transferring it, and then Paul told me do it to your computer, it's easier, so that's the only thing.
Yeah, I could have used that before I did it. Now I don't want to burn the whole
Well, I
class.
thought Alice was going to record, but you're fine. I'm sure you figured it out.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Alice, are you able to turn on your muted, your sound?
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
Good, good. I see some balloons back there, so that's awesome.
Oh, yeah. I just retired yesterday from my job.
Oh,
I'm
congratulations.
starting today my next job.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's for the weary. All right. That's awesome. All right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Stacey. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How the beautiful baby, or your children. I was say babies, not babies anymore.
Not babies anymore. We're officially over 2 now. They are downstairs with Mike right now.
Oh, fun, fun. That's cool.
I know at some point I told Mike he's going to have to bring them up because Alice will not go a whole Zoom call without seeing them.
Yeah, right?
How's everything going?
Good, good. Yeah, it's just still business as usual. It's just from home.
It is. How's your family up in Michigan?
Well, they're still okay. It's just like my son is just very nervous, We were supposed to go to Florida this year and meet there and visit my mom and things like that, but don't get to do that now. And yeah, so
It's
we're
a bummer.
gonna go this week, and it's like, yeah.
We were supposed to have a whole family reunion on my husband's side I think we were going to meet in Georgia, and it was the first time like all the kids were going to be together.
Oh man, that would have been fun.
I know, we're really bummed because one of Mike's uncles passed away, and we didn't get to go and do the normal grieving that everybody else would do. And
yeah,
the grandmas on both sides, mine in Michigan and then his mom in Florida, are just, my mom had a trip planned to come actually like right as COVID hit. And I'm like, no, Mom, you work in a hospital still. You can't come.
Right.
And she's just, she's dying. She's like, they're so big. I'm missing everything. I'm like, it's okay, Mom. It's okay.
Yeah.
We'll
Hard.
figure it out.
Yeah, gosh. Yeah, no, I'm an aunt, and I'm having those withdrawals, so I can't imagine being a grandma. Like, that was horrible. Yeah.
I know, not getting to see any of my nieces, it's hard. It sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
So,
No.
well, Alice is our host today, our hostess, and I'm trying to get her sound on, and I don't not hearing a response via text or back. So we're just trying to get her up and running and make sure that she's good. She might be warming up a coffee or something. I don't know. I'm trying to get her sound on, so I get reassurance here. But yeah, thanks guys for showing up. And then we're going to be, Alice is going to also be teaching an addenda class. We're getting that on the calendar too. So today we'll be focusing on mainly the contract itself, and then we'll have her for another class to do the addenda. And yeah, looking forward to it. This is being recorded too, and I will figure out how to make that available for everybody when it's complete. And
So are we primarily just doing the 1 to 4, or are we going to do over the appraisal addendum?
We're going to do, I believe she's going to do that one too, but I'm not quite sure. And I know she sent that out today, so I was assuming that that's what she meant by sending it out, because we'll at least handle that one.
Okay.
And then,
Well,
yeah.
howdy doody, everybody.
Yay!
Here I am, deep in the weeds, just trying to find my way around.
Well, welcome. We're happy you're here, and you're the host now. So,
And you've got it recording?
yes, and it's recording. So
Okay,
you're all
thank you.
set.
So I'll watch my language then. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, good.
Hey.
And then I'm going to jump off now, and it's recording to the cloud, Alice. And then later on, I will figure out how to make that available to everybody.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how to get to it either. You can show me.
We'll
Okay.
figure it out.
Thanks.
All right, I'll let you do it. All right,
Appreciate
bye.
it. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye.
Okay, so how many times have you heard this about the 1 to 4? Bunches of time. But guess what? You're going to get something different every time. So don't panic. We're going to talk about the 1 to 4 because we're always having new people coming on board. And the one thing they need to know immediately is something about the 1 to 4 contract. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. If you have any question, don't hesitate to speak up and let me hear your sweet voice. I miss all of you so badly that, I'm a prisoner in my home here since middle of March. And I just am kind of going a little cuckoo. But anyway, at least I don't have small children like poor Stacy there. I mean, she's got beautiful children, but still there's a lot of work involved.
Yeah. Would you like them? I'll send them to your house.
That could cure me, yes. Okay, so there's about 20 things on this contract that we're going to go over today because we only have 2 hours. And believe it or not, I kept people from being too terribly bored for 4 hours before. And now I think about it, thinking, gosh, that's a lot. That's a big commitment, for 4 hours. But anyway, just know that we're going to cover all the highlights of it. Did everybody get the attachments that I put in the email that I sent out to everybody? Good.
I didn't. Wait, which attachments?
In the email that had the link to come to the class today from me, there were all the attachments as well. Okay. So if you don't have them, just email me later and I'll send them to you again, but don't hesitate. What we're going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you in a minute. We're going to just go over it a little bit by little. There's like 20 points I want to make sure that we cover. The rest of it, when you're really, really bored, you can read the rest of it. But anyway, I'm trying to think how many newbies I have on here. This is the most people I've had in quite a while. So,
You're popular, Alice.
well, I hope it's not by fear, but yeah, whatever it takes, it's just okay. But anyway, just know that once you've taken this class, you will know more than 95% of the agents out there about the 1 to 4 contract, because I leave nothing to the imagination when it comes to the 1 to 4. every blank, every numbered item on that contract will have, I took notes for you. How about that? So if you don't think if you put down the right notes, I know this thing pretty good, and I put the notes that you need to know on there.
Oh, that's great.
So it doesn't get much better than that for you to just have everything you need. Now I've only got 3 monitors here on my desk, and I'm trying to 2 monitors and a laptop. So that, I don't know if I've got enough to work with here. But anyway, if y'all need to take a break, just say, hey, can we take a break for 5 minutes or something, and we'll step away and get a refreshment or whatever you want to do. But other than that, let's get started. Okay, I'm going to first share with you the, let's see, which should I put up, the contract or the handout? Do any of you have the handouts?
I don't have it.
You do, or some of you do? Some of
I
you
don't. I
Okay.
don't.
So then what we'll do is we'll go over, I'll put up the contract, and then I'll look at the handout that I sent you, the A to Z of the 1 to 4, or what the blank goes in those blanks, as I call it. So I will put the contract up first. Let me share my screen. And I even put some of the stuff off of it so it wouldn't scare you to death to see what was on my screen. Where is it? It's contracts class. I had them all up here. Bear with me just a minute.
Alice?
Yes.
It's Ruth. Hello, everybody.
Oh, hi, Ruth.
If y'all put your email in the message, if you did not receive the attachment, I can email it to you real fast.
Oh,
Okay.
That's very nice of you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. Put that in there anyway, so I can make sure that we have the correct email address for you, and also I'll know that you attended. Okay, so the contract here. This is what I'm trying to do. Okay, can y'all see that? Can you see the contract? Okay, good. All right. So in the A to Z of the 1 to 4, I'll show you what that looks like. Let's just stop for a second here.
Alice, you don't have the contract pulled up yet.
Oh, it's not showing for you? Okay, I'm not sharing it adequately yet then. Okay, screen sharing. Okay, how in the hell do I share this thing? I'm sounding like Gene Grubb more every day. Okay.
Yeah, we see your screen, but we just see where you were.
We haven't opened it yet.
Yeah, we don't see where you've opened it.
Okay. So now you don't see anything, and now you see nothing. You see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this is like 40 something pages. So I've killed a lot of trees for this thing. So it's good that I can send it to you this way. So basically what we're going to do is, important things to remember. There's 2 things I tell people always to remember. Tell your sellers it's not what you disclose that hurts you, it's what you don't disclose. And the other thing to remember is for a buyer, it takes 1 to buy, but it takes 2 to sell. I guess you tell sellers that too, really. So if someone has property, but they have since married, that is, even though that was their property before, in the eyes of the state of Texas, that is could be considered community property. And they could put a glitch in the transaction if you don't get everybody to sign up front. So that's why we get signatures on listings, even though one says, well, no, this is my property alone. Okay, that's very nice. Congratulations. I'm so glad you invested in property. However, if you want to sell it, we need to have both parties on there. Okay. All right. So that's the A to Z of the 1 to 4. Let's go back to the contract now. Maybe it'd be better to do this. Maybe we'll just go through here, 1 page at a time. Can you see it enough? You want me to make it bigger? Is that better?
Thank you.
Okay. On the very beginning, the latest version is this 2/12/18. They were floating one out there that we may wind up having in November. That's usually November, right before Thanksgiving is usually when they switch it up on us. I don't know if it's because the Mercedes payments come due there for the attorneys or what, but that's when they swap up and change the contracts, typically. So on this one, the first thing they're asking is, what are the names of the parties of the contract? And the names of the parties, where would you find those names of the parties? Well, you'd say, I'd get it off the MLS, and you'd be partially right, but to get it officially, you'd want to get it off the tax records, right? So you'd go into the, if it's on the MLS, then you'd go into the MLS and click the little $ above, that's a little icon, and that will take you to the tax record. What will show you who the owners are. It'll also tell you if it's in a mud or water district, which is very important, all that sort of stuff.
So Alice, if the owner, if they show an owner that's deceased on there, do you have to put both? What is, like if it's a husband and a wife and the wife is deceased or something?
Okay, so it depends. Was there a will? Is she the person that's in charge of the estate? Whoever's in charge of the estate, you would put in there Alice Carone for the estate of blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
Okay, so you put that in that whole information, bit of information on there. So you're addressing the fact that it's an estate. Okay, and title can help you check on that as well to see if there's other parties involved and that sort of thing. That's when it gets sticky, when you've got stepchildren, in-laws, outlaws, all kinds of laws. Then you got problems. It could have problems. I've seen as many as like 14 names on a document, but you don't see that very often because usually one person is in charge of it and they have that filled in. So
does it have to be probated before they can sell?
If it's not, then the buyers need to know that it hasn't been, because it's going to be a big delay. It could be a big delay of a couple of months or something. Okay. So if you were buying something, you would want to know if, oh, I'm going to buy it, I'm going to move in next week, but oh, I forgot, there's this little detail that we have to go, they haven't gone through probate yet. So those are important things to know if there is a death in the family that owns the property. Okay. So if the kids are living in the house, well, do you have something? Did your mom or dad leave a will? Did they make either of you the person in charge of the estate or anything? Just all those questions have to come out, and you have to know that.
So they wouldn't get a clear title until it goes through probate, right?
Right.
Okay.
At probate, then they'll go through that. There are some attorneys that have some other methods to handle situations like this before it happens. So the children or the spouse gets put in on this special document. I forgot what it's called, but it has to do with handling it ahead of time, even without having it probated. So there are some attorneys that can do that in the real estate field.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So sure, you're welcome. It has the names of the buyers and the sellers. You want to get it right. I had an agent yesterday who said they need to add a name onto the contract and it's already an executed contract. What do we do? The answer is, what you do is you create an amendment and have all the parties sign it, saying that Alice Carone will be added to the contract of property, blah, blah, blah. And so that you have that person added onto it. Maybe they thought they didn't need her income or something, then all of a sudden now they find they do need the income or something. All kinds of things to pop up. So the names of the buyers and the sellers, ask the buyers how they'd like their names to appear. And then if there are more than 2 sellers or buyers and you can't fit it on there, you can put it in special provisions. That's not practicing law. You can put that information in there to go into paragraph 1 of the contract as one of the buyers or one of the sellers. So realist tax is your friend. Look on there to see what it says. Then I already said it takes 1 to buy, 2 to sell. 1 to buy, 2, yeah, that's right. Property. Here's where you get the legal description, and that would come off the realist or the tax record as well. You'd get the lot and block number of and the addition of the neighborhood, etc., and go with that. You can get that off there easily. Also, if you're wanting something removed from the property, say that there's this beautiful, what they think is a beautiful above ground pool in the back that has little rickety steps up to it, and you want that removed before you have it, then you would put in there, please, to seller to remove above ground pool or rickety steps or whatever it is you want removed. That's that. We're moving right along. Okay. The third paragraph is all about the sales price. And of course, there's three components of that. There's the sales price, then there's how much you're financing and how much you're putting down. One day they'll magically fill those little numbers in for you, but it doesn't at this point. So that's why we have calculators on our phones to figure out what the bottom line is, what the offer price is, and then how much they're putting down. And then you'll decide, you'll determine how much they're being financed. And it's very, very important. If there's a checkbox and that checkbox isn't checked or something, then chances are somebody could throw you under the bus for questioning that. So just know that that's very important. If there's a box, they want it checked or unchecked for a reason. So usually you'll see things are third-party financing addendum. Very, very, very seldom. I don't think I've ever seen in the 36 years I've been doing this, maybe back in the olden days, loan assumption addendums. They did loan assumptions. You see sometimes seller financing addendums. And when we say seller financing, we mean that they own the property outright. They paid it all off. It's not one of those things that I call, it better be a sandwich. It's called a wrap. Okay. It's not one of those. It has to do with they actually own it outright. And then you just fill in the sales price and make sure that A and B equals C. And then you're good to go on that one. But that's all that you have on there. And there's a place for you to write notes if you had it with you. That's why I miss having it in class, because we could all talk to each other and laugh and cut up and all. Next, you have the license holder disclosure. They're talking about taking this out of the contract, or I think maybe the latest iteration, they're talking about moving it around into a different section. But this is where you would disclose if you have a familial relationship with either the buyer or the seller. That's where you put that. Alice Carone has a familial relationship with seller or buyer, or whatever it is. Or if that agent has more than a 10% interest in the property themselves, and they would disclose that as well. So that's one thing that was only added in 2016, so they may be taking it away. Earnest money. You hear a lot of issues about earnest money. Okay, so finally, they came up with an actual number of days that earnest money has to be deposited within 3 days. Who knew? They said within a reasonable time for all the years that I've been doing it. And then finally, they said, okay, within 3 days after the effective date, buyer must deliver blank dollars as earnest money to title company, whatever title company name that is. And if there was additional earnest money that would be needing to be put up in a second stage, that would be the rest. And I hardly ever see anything in there. They usually put the earnest money up and then that's it. And when something's bolded in the contract, time is of the essence for this paragraph. There's a reason for that. I didn't bold this stuff. This is just what I've copied out of the contract. Earnest money isn't required for a valid contract. Did you know that? You don't have to have earnest money up unless you put in there that there's going to be earnest money. And then if you don't have earnest money up, you could be in default. So now they've created a new form that lets the seller terminate a contract if earnest money isn't put up within 3 days. I never thought I'd live to see that. I'm so thrilled that a seller doesn't have to be just tied up with a transaction where the people say, I'm bringing it in tomorrow. I'm bringing it in tomorrow. We say, yeah, what year tomorrow? Because it's not here, it's still not here. And it's 2 weeks later. So just know that now after 3 days, if it's not there, and then we mean 3 business days in title, because they obviously don't work on the weekend. But it's 3 days total, any day with option. But for earnest, it's business days. And unless it's a holiday, and then if if the 4th of July was on a Friday instead of Saturday, then the Friday would not count. The holiday would not count. But since it's on the weekend, it doesn't count anyway. Earnest money. So yes.
Just to clear that up, so we went under contract on, let's say, Saturday, so then that bumps our count to Monday. So 3 days would start Monday, correct?
What do you mean start?
Well,
Okay. So if you wrote a contract on the 4th of July,
right.
and then that day doesn't count, that Sunday doesn't count. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, by Wednesday, that would have to be deposited with
I just
title.
wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Okay, good. We're on the same page. Unfortunately, it's page 6, but anyway. Next we have, we'll go down to title policy and survey. Okay, so this is an interesting thing here. The title policy, this is pretty, it's typically a seller's expense, but everything's negotiable in a contract, right? So if the title policy is, you check the box for seller, and unless you've negotiated something differently, and with this market the way it is, it could be it's buyer's expense. But when you get down to number 8, that's where it gets really tricky. Okay, so if you have a property in a lot, say a lot located in a development, and say that it wasn't platted right from the beginning, and say that each house in there is actually not on the right lines, and each house is out of whack. That means that's going to affect your property on both sides. In case something of sort of an issue ever came up, they came up with this thing where you can get additional coverage to cover something like that up to a certain amount. And I don't remember what it was exactly, but I'm thinking it's something like $8,000 or something. But you would check typically either 8.1 will not be amended or will be amended. Now what we say there is, to explain it, if you don't amend it, it's going to be just the same way it is, and you don't get any coverage. If you say it will be amended to read shortages in areas at the expense of, and then check the box, buyer or seller, then that's where you have a little different issue there. And where is that? Go back up there. Come on. Area boundary exceptions. This came from T&T title. Everybody has their own definition of how to explain it, but I don't have to go over it right now, but you have this. This is what is the area and boundary exception? What's a survey? What's an amendment to the area and boundary exception? And this tells you possible scenarios and what it would run. It's not very expensive to have coverage for something like that. And if you have acreage, it's going to cost quite a bit for a survey and stuff, but obviously you want to have that. But in case there was something wrong with the survey, say that you bought this property and this acreage, and it just so happens that the water is on the other side of the fence from what you bought, you didn't realize that, and you have no water, that could get expensive. And so to have that coverage, I highly recommend you get the coverage. It's typically, say that a typical title policy would run you about $1,500 or something, $1,500 and up, depending on the size of the property. And that amount is determined, is a standard price with all title companies, by the way. It's not cheaper to go to XYZ to go to there. It's a standard price per square foot. So just know that it's something like, it would be like a couple $100 more to have that extra coverage in case there was something determined later on with your property line, which would be very important.
So if a buyer, Alan, Christy, if a buyer was, so say for instance, I represent the seller and a buyer puts in an offer and they have will be amended paid by the seller, and I delete that and say, or scratch it out or make a change and say, no, you want that, it can pay by the buyer. And they just choose not to do it at all.
Yeah.
That's not on me, that's on that buyer's agent, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
But I mean, it's what, Alice, maybe $140?
Yeah, it's
Such
under
a
it's
little
under
amount of
it's
money.
under a couple $100. So
But it doesn't benefit the seller to pay for it.
it would if they got an illegal entanglement. Yes,
Right.
it
Would
could.
it? Okay,
Yeah,
good to know.
if the
Oh.
seller is paying for it, that could have an influence on how everything develops and how expensive it would be.
Well, see, you're always learning.
That's why I'm still here. I'm learning every
Always.
day. Okay, so that's that. So there's really not much on here. You can read this when you're really, really bored. When they're talking about politics or something, put it on there and just start reading it. Next, you have commitment. This is what you feel like you need to have after you've been in real estate a few years to be committed. No, this is commitment just means that the title company will take care of this for you. The title company says within 20 days after the title company receives a copy of the contract, seller shall furnish to buyer, meaning seller is going to pay for it basically, a commitment for title insurance and at buyer's expense, legible copies of the covenants and restrictions and all that sort of thing. So you can read that when you're really bored. If the time for the delivery will be automatically extended up to 15 days or 3 days before closing, if they can't get it within the time period of the 20 days, just know that too. This includes the chain of title for that property. Let's see. The title commitment consists of 4 different schedules. The important schedule is A and more importantly, B. C and D are kind of, okay, interesting, good to know. But B shows what they will not cover. So if there could be a lien on the property that you didn't know about or anything like that, there's those things that pop up at the last minute. So just know that, okay? Luckily, title takes care of all that. Now the survey. And if you have a title company that's not taking care of it, guess what? You're getting a new title company. Survey. The survey ranges anywhere between $500 and $600 up to thousands of dollars, I guess, depending on acreage and that sort of thing, if it's a big piece of land. But it says within so many days after the effective date of the contract, seller shall furnish to them the existing survey of, there's 3 choices here for the survey. I've got it and I'm going to give it to you. Second, the buyer is going to have to get their own. And 3, the seller will buy one for the buyers. I never see anybody check the 3rd one. It's usually the 1st one. And this is what's really important about this paragraph that I like to bring up is the fact that within so many days and usually between 2 or 3 days, if they've got it in hand, it shouldn't be that hard to get, right? It shouldn't take them 2 or 3 days to go upstairs and get it out of the attic or something. So within 2 or 3 days after the effective date of the contract, seller shall furnish to buyer and title company seller's existing survey of the property and a residential real property affidavit, otherwise called a T-47. The T-47 is a form where the sellers fill out in front of a notary that says they've changed nothing on the land, on the property, on the house, and nothing has been changed since they've owned it, and then it's notarized and signed and notarized. They must furnish both of those things if they're using an existing survey. If they're getting a new survey, you don't need a T-47 because it's brand new. Nothing probably has happened in the last few days on it if it's new. But if they've chosen this and they don't deliver the survey and the T-47 and they didn't change this, then guess what? If seller fails to furnish the existing survey or affidavit within the time prescribed, buyer shall obtain a new survey at seller's expense, no later than 3 days prior to closing. So if they don't furnish it, then guess what? If seller fails to furnish the existing survey or affidavit within the time prescribed, buyer shall obtain a new survey at seller's expense no later than 3 days prior to closing. So if they don't furnish it, If they can't find it and they can't get their hands on it right away, I'd say, don't check that box. Don't select that paragraph. And I would use one of those other paragraphs, let buyer get their own. Because typically, title is typically a seller's expense. Survey is typically a buyer's. But like I said, everything's negotiable. Any questions? Thoughts? No. Okay, let's move on. Let's see if there's anything on there. No, I think it's pretty crystal clear what I've put on there for the notes, so that will help you. Next, we have objections. Now, these aren't your objections. These are buyer objections. So that means it has to be something written by the buyer, right? Not written by you and sent to the title company. So you would get the buyers, if they object to something that they saw on the title policy or something about the survey or something, this is where they object. And they have for activity, typically you see for residential use, typically, or other activity. It says if it prohibits the following use or activity: building a swimming pool in the backyard. That could be a thing that could be put in there, that if they're not able to find out they're not able to build a swimming pool in the backyard, they can go back and say, well, you know, the contract was based on me being able to build a swimming pool in the backyard, and that's a deal breaker because my daughter competes, you know, and we have to have that. So just know that typically you just see for residential use on there only. And buyer must object the earlier of the closing date or blank days after buyer receives the commitment, and typically 5 to 7 days. Shouldn't take them that long to read it and figure out if it's going to work for them or not. And if it's not, then they need to write an email. They can send it directly to the title company and copy you on it so that they have formally objected to it. And then I would prefer that they signed something and attached it in an email and sent it to them. But the main thing is to object to it, or you might lose your chance to. Okay, that's good. That's it. Title notices, you can read that. That's boring. Okay, we'll go through that. What is the main thing it's saying here is HOAs. If, for instance, you may have not paid, your seller may not have paid their HOA dues regularly, and they're behind on a few of them. That means that the HOA could put an assessment and foreclose on the property and get that property in HOA. You don't see that very often, because usually people who haven't paid their HOA, they also owe Uncle Sam, and guess who has top priority? Uncle Sam. So that's that. But that's for your information. Can y'all hear David talking? Okay, good, because he's on the phone in there and he talks too darn loud. Okay. Statutory tax districts. If the property is situated in a utility or other statutorily created district providing water, sewer, drainage, or flood control, it says buyer should sign the statutory notice relating to the tax rate, bonded indebtedness, So basically what they're talking about is if there's a taxing entity, see this contract is all geared towards protecting the buyer. It's really slanted toward protecting the buyer. So that's why if you represent a seller, you've got to know where the points are that either your seller can, you know, basically say no to something, or if they didn't deposit earnest money timely, that sort of thing. That's about it. So this is saying that keep in mind that buyers of new homes, that their taxes will change. I learned that personally myself. So let them know that their first year of paying taxes on their new home is based on lot cost only, which, you know, lot cost is a lot less than the whole entire amount. So just a little reminder of that. And any good builder and any closer should bring that up to them as well and give them advice on that. Mine did, thank God. So that's, let's see, this one is talking about Tidewaters luckily we don't have much problem with that. Down in Corpus and around there though, that's where that would have an effect. So that's just warns them of those issues and any possible annexation. So that's just going over the things that could happen, but haven't happened. Now, here's a fun one. Property, I'm telling you, attorneys get paid by the word. Property located in a certificated service area of a utility service provider. They're talking about MUDs and water districts, folks. They could have said it a lot shorter. However, this is important because what I said, it's geared toward protecting the buyer, right? I've got this button that wants to open up. So if you see anything, you just yell out at me. So if they are not, if this is not disclosed to them that they have a MUD or water district, just know that they could get out of the contract. The buyer could get out of the contract if this MUD or water district notice that's supposed to be signed by the seller and provided by the seller prior to execution of the contract. If they're not given that up there in front before they finally sign everything off, the buyer can get out of the contract up until day of closing, guys. That is a big, strong get out of jail card that you don't want to let your sellers get stuck in. So when you are taking a listing, always say, are you in a MUD or water district? They're going to say, no, we don't have, we have city water. Okay. At that point, you look on the tax record, go back to the tax record and see what's being taxed, because most of them don't know. There was one where he said, no, we have city water. So there was no MUD or water district notice done, form done, and found out they had two MUDs. They had a MUD and a water district, one for fire prevention of public areas and one for the water for the pool. And so that's what MUDs and water districts are for things other than drinking water and that sort of thing. That's where that can get you in trouble by believing the seller, because the seller is not trying to delude you, they just don't know. So that's why we have to check it out. Okay, so that's that. But I put in there, underline in bold, it must be presented to the buyer prior to execution of the contract or by the sellers, or the buyers can walk. I had a situation one time where I told an agent that, and what did they do? They called the other agent and said, guess what? You haven't given us a MUD or water district notice. And so what did the other agent do? He got one right away and they accepted it. And so therefore it could continue, but he didn't do the best job of making sure his client is protected. Because what I would do in a situation like that, I'm not there to educate the other agent on the other side. I am going to be fair. I'm going to definitely be fair and try to do everything that I can. But bottom line is, my job is to look out for my client. And so what I would do is, if I represented the seller, I'd make sure and get this signed at the listing appointment or soon thereafter. And then if I received an offer, I'd immediately send one to the buyer's agent showing when it was sent before putting an effective date on the contract. But if I represent yes.
Quick question. So
Sure.
I normally have it signed and put it on the MLS.
That's
Is
not
that
delivery.
okay?
That is not delivery.
But they have access to the information.
But that's not delivery, and it's on you to deliver it.
Okay, so that doesn't count.
That does not count. And that does not count when somebody is saying, oh, it's on the MLS, just get it off there, do my job for me. No, that doesn't count.
But I thought it was acknowledgement that it was
No.
public access, so you had, no?
No.
Okay.
No, don't let that happen, because, oh gosh, I forgot that you said it was on there. I didn't get it. And so, my client's opting out now of this contract. Okay, what can you do? What, you going to prove something differently? No. So what you want to do is make sure that your back end is covered by making sure that when it says so many days it has to be delivered, within those days, you better deliver it. Okay.
Yeah. I make sure it's signed.
And accept, and also require that from the other side when you're on the other end of the thing. So just do that. You'll stay out of trouble, mostly. Next, we have public improvement districts. You don't see that too much here. You see it more in Fort Worth and some of those areas. And then you see propane gas system service areas. That is not where grandma has a propane tank in the backyard. That is where a whole development is using propane gas distributed by one company to everybody. So that's different. There's a couple around that have that. I'm trying to think what the name of them is. Plum Creek is one. But I can't remember any of the others. They're usually more rural and out of the center of town.
Isn't it Belterra down south?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard about Belterra, but it could possibly.
Propane.
I would check into it. Then we talk. Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say I do a lot of work up here in Leander, and we actually have several public improvement districts. And there's been some controversy about the builders not disclosing that until very late in the game. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. To be careful.
So builders are one thing, but it's saying that if we find out that there is a PID, then we need to make sure that we are letting them know that disclosing it. Okay.
Sure.
So that's good to know, because I didn't know that about Leander. So that's good to know. Good info. We learn from each other. Okay, so there's a form if there is a propane gas service area. It's the TXR 2514, used to be called TAR 2514. Does anybody have trouble with the TXR but me? I like calling it TAR. Hey, go to the TAR 2514. Okay, next we have notice of water level fluctuations. And this is talking about if you're on Lake Travis, Lake Austin, some body of water that is, let me turn my phone off and let them know I'm not available. They should be in my class. This is if it's 5,000 acre feet or larger. So those two lakes, obviously off the Colorado River especially, would apply. And it's just saying, you might see water there today and you might not see water there next year or whatever, or it may not be there and it may come back, and you just want to be aware of that. So we're all aware of that, but some people from other areas don't know that. They do now. Property condition, access to inspections and utilities. Utilities are supposed to be kept on all the time that it's listed up until closing. At closing, you're supposed to have gotten your buyers to switch electricity or water or whatever utility they need to transfer over into their name at a certain date, so that they can do that with the water, especially, so they don't have to actually turn the water off and you have to be there to make sure nothing floods when they turn the water back on. That's an important one. That's happened before, and then that's when I hear complaints because somebody left the spigot on and now the house is flooded and they're getting ready. The movers are arriving in 15 minutes. So that's access inspections and utilities. You can read that when you're needing to know about that. Another really important thing, it's a seller's disclosure notice. Everybody knows by now, we never touch the seller's disclosure notice, right? We don't, just check that box for me. I forgot to check that one box. I'm sorry, I wish I could do that, but we do everything through Seller Shield, and you will need to go online there and correct that yourself. And then let me know, and then I will download the corrected version. So seller's disclosure notice is basically three things. The buyer has it, the buyer doesn't have it, and the buyer's not getting it. Basically those three things. The buyer has received the notice because you sent it to them, or the buyer has not received the notice, and within so many days after the effective date of this contract, seller shall deliver the notice to buyer. You see that sometimes. or the seller is not required to furnish the notice. And there's several situations where the one's not required. And so I have listed those. This explains, this second bullet point there just explains the 3 choices. And then this fourth bullet point, is that the fourth? I'm not counting right. The third bullet point is who is not required to furnish a seller's disclosure. If it's in a foreclosure, a bankruptcy, if it's being transferred through divorce, or if it's a new home that you don't have a seller's disclosure, obviously, or if it's basically a tear down where the value of the dwelling doesn't exceed 5% of the value of the property, which is really hard to determine, as a matter of fact. But anyway, that's who doesn't have to. But an unrepresented seller, a FSBO, must still provide seller's disclosure. If you're helping someone purchase a FSBO house, well, then you still need to say, I'm sorry, but we have to have that seller's disclosure filled out. Would you like me to get you one? And get the form for them, because they're FSBO. They don't know what they're doing. Next, an investor who has never been in the house must still provide a seller's disclosure. If a property management company was overseeing it for them, the seller should contact them to get more information and to help seller fill it out properly and completely so that they can have accurate information rather than just unknown across everything. So there's the TREC disclosure. It's the shortest and has minimum information. I think it's 4 pages now. It keeps growing. I think it's 4 pages now. And the Texas Realtor disclosure is about 6 pages now. It used to be 5 pages. And basically, both of those seller's disclosures are the choices that a seller has to fill out on Seller Shield. I will show you something about Seller Shield here. And back to the old story, it's not what you disclose that hurts you, it's what you don't disclose. And just know that if the seller doesn't disclose it, and I'd have this little conversation with them, hey, if there's any doubt of what you should disclose, then disclose it. It's not going to hurt you to disclose it. I mean, some things are going to hurt them, but it's going to hurt them more if they don't disclose it. So there are certain situations that may be delicate that they don't want to disclose, a death in the family or something like that. That could be very sensitive. And that's where something you may have to help them with the verbiage of how to express that. But if the seller doesn't disclose something, just know that the neighbors are going to help them out. And so let them know that it might be better off just to disclose it. And then I'm mentioning on here using the Seller Shield dashboard that all of our agents have access to, and it gives their clients the choice between the 2 sellers disclosure of which one they want to fill out, and it lets them choose. And then it's going to show up on your dashboard since they're your client, because you're going to put your client information in there, and that's going to send them the seller's disclosure to fill out. And that way it explains things. If there's something like, do you have French drains or something, there's a little information button that they can say, what's a French drain? And it'll tell them what a French drain is. So it really is very helpful of answering questions that you don't have to address, which is better. So that's Seller Shield, and that's the contact person to contact if you need, if you're not finding it or not able to log in, okay? That's that. Acceptance of property condition. As is means the present condition of the property. Okay, so typically what you're going to see is buyer accepts the property as is. Sometimes you'll see buyer accepts the property as is, as long as they do blah, 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 something on there. But my feeling is right now we're negotiating price. Why give them ammunition of what we're going to be asking for automatically we've already decided until we negotiate the price? Because what they're going to do is they're going to see the price and they're going to say, oh, okay, so this is going to cost us da, 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 da. And then we're going to, they're going to take that off add that on to the amount of what you've offered, basically. They're going to do that for you. Isn't that nice of them? So what you're going to do is, typically buyer accepts the property as is, but if there's something you want to put in there, such as home to be professionally cleaned upon prior to closing or something to that effect. You could put that in, and that's not going to hurt anything. But basically, you're going to make sure you have an option period for your client and that they can negotiate repairs and things like that at that point. All contracts are as-is contracts, no matter what. It's just when you add an option period, it changes it from as-is to something that you can negotiate. Okay. Let's see. You tell them when they're looking at things, you're going to tell them, hey, we're not looking for missing switch plates here. We're looking for big ticket items such as the HVAC, roof and termite problems, foundation issues, anything like that that's a big item, or some damage to walls, or whatever it is that they feel is important to them. And let's see, that's it. You want to make sure that they have documentation of any warranties or anything like that to provide to the buyer as well, of anything. Okay, next we have lender required repairs and treatments and completion of repairs and treatments. 7E basically is a buyer out if required repairs exceed 5% of the sales price. So neither party are obligated to pay for the lender required repairs if they so choose not to. Most people have their house on the market to sell, so they're going to say, okay, we can live with that, and they'll move forward. But just read the contract. If you read the contract, you will understand a lot more about what it's exactly saying. Let's see what else. Any agreed, 7F, any agreed upon repairs are to be completed during the process, and the seller will do so legally with proper permits and licensed contractors if licenses are required. So Texas has no license for general contractors, but or remodelers, but plumbers, yes. Electricians, yes. Do you want a licensed electrician putting in a new light fixture, or do you want grandpa or Mr. Jones, who's never done it before, who's looking on Google to figure out how to do it, to put in your electrical work? I don't think so. You do not want to wake up and smell electrical wiring burning. So that's why we say they should have licensed contractors do plumbing and electrical work. Let's see, nothing else I missed there. Nope. It also allows extending the closing date by 5 days if needed to have the work arranged for by the sellers. Just read what it says. Environmental matters and residential service contracts. Those two just really don't fit together, I don't think. But anyway, bottom line is, environmental matters means if there's this little tiny lizard or little birdie that something that could be harmed, they're not going to be able to build anything on that property. And that happened over there by Lakeline Mall, in an area over there for years. They weren't able to use a certain area. And finally, I guess the little lizards all moved off or something, they determined, because then they started building. Residential service contracts. Okay, I know a lot about them. And the reason is, well, they used to be called home warranties. And then they said, well, they're not really warranting anything. So they quit calling them home warranties, and they made them, oh, bye, you're going to your appointment. Bye, David. Say bye to David. Okay. So now they've got residential service contracts that what happens is, if you want to purchase one of these residential service contracts, it's just saying you must disclose, because Keller Williams is a big company. We have a relationship with American Home Shield. And so there's a document, it's TXR 2513, about disclosure of relationship with residential service contract provider. And in that, we have to fill that out, and we have to say it's for advertising and promotion, because that's what it's for. And we put it on whichever side of the transaction we're on. That is a TREC form. And so it is required to notify people. It's not saying you have to use American Home Shield. It's saying we have a relationship, and they may pay for some repairs on our computers in the office or something like that. It's not a large amount, trust me, but we have to disclose that, or they can say, you didn't disclose the fact that you had that, and you're supposed to. You just don't want to let them have a little toehold in that they can say, you didn't disclose something. So TREC came up with that disclosure because TREC also oversees the residential service contract companies as well as the real estate agents. Isn't that interesting? And inspectors. So they've got the whole monopoly of that. But bottom line is, you need that document provided to the other side to let them know that we do have that small amount. And if anybody ever needs a sample how to fill it out, if there's a question about it, I should start adding that as a page on here, just because it is a commonly used one. But when I got up to 45 pages, I kind of thought about cutting out some things. So that amount, typically you'll see around, $600. You could see $550, somewhere in there, but provide your client with some brochures, either electronically or hard copy, and let them decide who they want, what service they want. When I bought my new home, I still bought me a residential service contract, because when you buy a new home, it's covered for the first year for things that come up. But after that first year, you're on your own. So as long as you purchase it before that first year is up, I bought one for a new home, which covers 4 years. So I've covered for another like 2 or 3 years in case something came up. So that's residential service contract. And it says the purchase of a residential service contract is optional. Similar coverage may be purchased from various companies authorized to do business in Texas. Now, if that little section is blank and they didn't ask for a home warranty for some reason, then you don't need that residential service contract disclosure. You don't need that because it's not involved in the transaction. But just know if there is a number in there, then you do need it. Okay, home warranties, we talked about that. It could jump up, more expensive than $500 or $600 if they've got a pool or spa and all that kind of thing. If they want additional appliances that covered all sorts of things. So find out what they want. Here, broker's fees. All obligations of the parties for payment of broker's fees are contained in separate written agreements. Guess what they're called? Listing agreements. Okay, so they don't go into broker's fees here. Now, at the very end of it does have a little blank for you to put a percentage of what the agent is paying a buyer's broker, but that is not really part of this contract because it's in other agreements. But anyway, that just says they have listing agreements for that. Let's go on down. I'm getting close to halfway. How are we doing on time? Not bad. Closing. Okay, make sure that you have the address of the property on the top of all of your forms too, so make sure that you're nailing it down that this is for that property. Closing. The closing of the sale will be on or before blank 2000 blank, or within 7 days after objections made under paragraph C, 7D have been cured or waived. So it says on or before. Take a sip of water. Okay, at closing, it's saying what seller shall execute, blah, blah, blah. But the key is, if you have a date in there, and I better not ever see a TBD in there. Go, no, 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 no. It has to have a date. If there's a dollar sign, it has to have a dollar amount, not a TBD, to be determined. So just know that whatever date that is, if your clients are wanting to move in sooner than that, because it's vacant and it's just sitting there and they need to move in faster, just make sure that title and the lender can make that happen. Because sometimes if they see that date on there, guess what date they're aiming for? That's the date they're aiming for, even if you want to move it up faster. So just, it's better to know if you're wanting to change that sooner, make sure all parties can handle that. So that's about that. And here it talks a little bit about general warranty deeds and what the special warranty deeds are. So when you are bored, read that, and that you'll be more knowledgeable about all that information. It's also talking about a notice of tenant of change in management and accountability for security deposits for lease properties, if they're investment properties, all of that sort of thing too. It's very important. Next, we have possession. Buyer's possession. Seller shall deliver to buyer possession of the property in its present or required condition, ordinary wear and tear accepted, upon closing and funding. That's what you'll see most of the time. Occasionally though, and actually probably more than occasionally, they'll have a temporary residential lease. A temporary residential lease means that either the seller wants to stay in there past closing a little while, or the buyer wants to move in there a little sooner than closing, which you really don't want to do. If the seller needs to stay in there a little bit later and it's okay with the buyer, then you would have the seller's residential lease form signed by the sellers and the buyers saying, this is what they'll pay for rent. This is what they need for deposit. This is who's going to pay the utilities, all that sort of thing. And a temporary residential lease for this temporary situation cannot be longer than 90 days. 90 days is the maximum, okay? Leases after the effective date, seller may not execute any new leases. Really? Funny that they have to put that in there, but they do. So that explains about sellers' temporary residential leases and buyers' temporary residential leases and the numbers. Aren't you glad I took all these notes for you? Mm-hmm. The buyers or sellers should contact their insurance rep to see how a temporary lease will affect their possessions being covered by insurance. Raleigh, you had a question about that to me. I heard on the phone, somewhere on the phone, I think it was. And the answer is if someone's moving in there sooner, then even if the sellers are staying in there, once they've closed, guess what? They no longer have insurance on those interior items, do they? So that it would be good to have renter's insurance on their possessions in there, just in case something, God forbid, happened for the time that they're going to be in there. If we're talking a month or a week even, it's not going to cost very much to have renter's insurance on your goods in there. If you're a seller that's wanting to stay in there, well, once they close, that the dwelling is going to belong to the buyer, and the buyer is going to have insurance that's going to cover their things, but their things are not inside the house. So that seller needs to make sure that their goods are insured as well in case of a fire or a flood or something horrible like that. So those are just things to touch on, to think about if they're going to move in sooner. So it can get more messy when there's a temporary residential lease, but sometimes it's just essential. It just has to happen. So I don't recommend letting a buyer move in early, because then that's kind of like, how can I put this nicely? They're going to move in and they're going to see all the things that they didn't see before when they wake up in the morning, the sun's shining in their eyes and they don't like that or something. Whatever they can find, they're going to find out, I don't like that so much. I think I'm going to try to get out of this contract. Or all of a sudden they said, you know what, that living room, you wouldn't believe how good that black leather sofa looks in there. What black leather sofa? Oh, the one I put on my credit card. Well, guess what? They may not qualify for the loan now because they went out and bought a big ticket item and now their ratios are messed up. So if you're going to let them move in, say, do not buy anything but groceries and medicine. And do not put it on anything. Just pay cash for it. So just know that things can change. And now with this COVID stuff, lenders are getting much more strict. They're where they qualified before, now they're not so sure they're going to be qualified. There's a whole lot of more iffy things going on with lending right now. That being said, there's still a whole lot of business going on right now as well. A lot of sales, a lot of leases. In fact, that's why everything is multiple offer now. There's not enough out there available, and just about everything is multiple offer. Leases, so we talked about that. Special provisions. This is a really special section. Okay, repeat after me. I don't have to hear you, but repeat after me. I am not an attorney. I want to see your mouths move. Okay, you got it. All right. We cannot practice law. If we put anything in there that says to the effect, if this happens, then they consider that practicing law. You cannot put anything in there such as buyer will offer $1,000 above highest offer something. You cannot do that. There's all kinds of things that you can't do. You can only put factual things that aren't covered somewhere else in the contract. We sometimes try to help too much. That gets us in trouble. Let's see, you could add additional buyer sellers names that didn't fit in paragraph 1. You could add a longer legal description that didn't fit in paragraph 2. You could put in an offer deadline, like buyer respectfully requests a reply by 6 p.m. on blah, 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 whatever. You could do that. We can't do lease purchases. Only attorneys could draw up something like that. So you're never going to put lease purchase information in there. There are no promulgated forms for it, so we can't do that. Never use an escalation clause. That's where you're offering a dollar amount over the amount of the highest price offered. That's practicing law. We can't do that in the state of Texas. They used to do that. Settlement and other expenses. Moving on to number 12. This is where the sellers are going to be told to look right after they look at the offer price to see if they're really getting that offer price or if they're having to pay some closing costs for the buyers as well. Maximum for a conventional loan, these numbers may have changed. I may need to adjust this, and I'll have to confirm, but you can confirm with the lender what these maximums are that can go in that blank. Because if they're receiving more than what they can actually use legally, then those funds, they don't get the benefit of it. They don't get to put, oh, what you have, like, oh, $800 left. Oh, let's buy a home residential service contract. No, you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. So they want to get every penny that they negotiated. So make sure that they can get that. Always check with the lender on the maximums. Okay. Help your seller to understand that the money is coming from proceeds rather than their pocket immediately. In other words, what they're really being paid is the difference between the sales price and in paragraph C and paragraph 12A. So then it goes into prorations. And prorations means something that luckily title will figure out for you. That's going to be prorations of either property taxes, assessments, any kind of dues, rents, HOA fees, any of that sort of thing. They will figure all of that out because the seller is only going to pay up to the point of the month that they have it. And so anyway, just know that, but just be aware of that. Read this when you get a chance. It's pretty simple. It's not anything hairy or anything. Casualty loss. This has to do with the property being destroyed or damaged by fire or flooding. Could be our two things we have here. It's either flooding or fire. Okay. So bottom line is, if it's damaged or destroyed by fire or other casualty between the effective date and the closing, the seller has a chance to restore the property, unless of course it burned to the ground. It'll be a little bit hard to do. Bring it back to its previous condition in time for the closing, or the buyer can terminate and get earnest money returned. That's just one more out for the buyer to get out of it if something happened. The buyer can choose to give the seller more time to make repairs, or can even accept the property and the insurance proceeds and deductible to complete the repairs him or herself, provided this is okay if it's cash or if the lender's okay with it, because they might not go for that, but it's something to address. This is a really important paragraph, and it's the most boring paragraph to read, but it's about default. It explains what default is and how it's remedied. And it basically says if the seller refuses to sell or the buyer refuses to buy, The other party can sue them for specific performance. If buyer is refusing to continue due to one of the many outs a buyer has, that's not default. That's one of their outs that they can get out of the contract for. The seller has very few outs. Basically, they can say no to repairs. They can say no to anything that's asked for them, not sign any amendments, or they can say you didn't deposit earnest money timely, and within the third day, if they haven't deposited, they can terminate then. But typically, the objective is to sell the property, and so they shouldn't be looking for outs, but you just need to be aware of if there is some. Then we have mediation, and I've been to a couple mediations, really interesting. Mediation is the policy of the state of Texas to encourage resolution prior to a lawsuit. And what do I see most of the time? Most of the time you see an attorney letter, and rather than saying let's have mediation. So when they have mediation, now they must mediate before they do that. Basically, there's a mediator that goes between rooms that the different sides are in, and they go to one and offer something, and they say, no, that's not going to fly. We want this. They go back and explain to the other side, and they just go back and forth like a ping pong ball until everybody gets so tired of talking about it that they negotiate something. Then the mediator types it up, everybody signs it, and it's not really something that's really can tie anything up. I mean, it's legal, but they're supposed to do it. They've agreed to do it, but it doesn't have teeth in it like an attorneys do, because attorneys have lots of teeth. That's mediation. Attorney's fees is talking about a buyer seller can have an attorney that wants to look over things for them, because a lot of people do this in other states, and so they think that that's the way to go instead of title companies here. And let's see, we've done that. Let's see, escrow. The escrow agent's not a party to this contract. It's just talking about that. And the expenses, demand. This is where upon termination of this contract, either party or the escrow agent may send a release of earnest money when they're deciding to get out of it. It says, if your client is wanting to terminate a contract, the first thing you'll do is, if you represent the buyer, because the seller doesn't sign a termination unless he's terminating because of no earnest money, you would do the termination of contract, and then you do the release of earnest money document, and have both of those signed by your client and send them to the other agent and title. The reason is you want title to be aware of what this is going south and what's happening. But it's saying here that they should not be holding up on anything. They should go ahead and move forward. It says damages. Any party who wrongfully fails or refuses to sign a release acceptable to the escrow agent within 7 days of receipt of the request of release of earnest money will be liable to the other party for damages, the earnest money, reasonable attorney's costs, and all costs of lawsuit. So they've got 7 days. It said, you've had 7 days, you should sign the release and let us move on to buy another house. It talks about the title company being a neutral third party. TXR does have a form, notice of termination of contract, and then they also have the release of earnest money form, of course. Representations, it's just saying that if all covenants, representations, and warranties in this contract survive closing, if any representation of seller in this contract is untrue, seller will be in default. So it's just saying if something comes up later, it could be bad. Federal tax requirements. This is if a seller is a foreign person, then it's saying that the government wants to get their taxes for that, and the title will be holding out funds to cover taxes for that. And so they need to be aware of that if they're selling a piece of property, that all of a sudden they think they're going to get a bunch of money back, and some of it has to go for taxes. That's handled by title, thank goodness though. So that just goes on. Then we have notices. This is really important section. Notices to buyer and to seller. So whichever side you're on, make sure that your seller or buyer's information is in there, because if that is blank, then something happens down the line that the attorney or somebody at title has to notify somebody of something. If that's not filled out, they cannot send that. So even if you're on one side and the other side is finished with it, they've signed and initialed everything and they didn't fill theirs out, what I would ask them to do is at least put the agent's email address over on the other side so that they have something that they can send to somebody that's not paying attention. So you want to make sure that they have contacts. You do not want to be on vacation laying on the beach. Yeah, I know we do. We really want to be laying on the beach. But you do not want to be laying on the beach and all of a sudden get ping that there's something that's going south and you've got to get in touch with your client and you're got suntan oil all over you and all this kind of stuff. Make sure you put your client's information in there. You put your information, if you want to put your email address on there too, that's fine. Put your email address as well. I used to be terrified of putting my client's information on there, feeling that I'm giving that information to the other side. Well, then I really realized that I just dared them to contact my client with that through that information. So I kind of grew up and got past that. Realized that doesn't matter. Just let them bring it on. Contact my client. See how that gets you. So that's primarily used by the title company for information purposes. You want to make sure it's timely delivered to your client. So why not make title be responsible for timely delivering it? Agreement of parties. This is where if there's any documents involved in the contract, in addition to the contract, associated with the contract, then you want to check the boxes. So if it's finance, you're going to check the third party financing. There may be an HOA, you check that. It could be a temporary lease, you check those. There's several different things on here that you would see. One thing you don't see is a seller's disclosure. And the reason you don't is because the seller's disclosure, while an important disclosure, is not part of this contract. That is actually a notice between the buyers and the sellers. So that would not be added on here. But if you had a residential service contract disclosure, they don't have that on there. So you'd check other and you'd put TXR 2513 residential service contract disclosure. You put that on there. Anything that's in addition, it could be a non-realty item addendum. Is non-realty item? I don't think they added that. Nope. No. Non-realty item addendum would be another one. Anything that's added on there that's associated with this, that you're wanting to ask for something, you want to put it on there that it's included with this contract. Okay. All right. We're moving right along. Termination option. Really important. Okay. I can't tell you the number of times I get calls from agents on the weekend. It says, Alice, my client didn't listen to me and they sent the option money and the earnest money and together and overnighted it, and it's in the title company's safe at their office, and it's Sunday and my option is up, our option is up at 5 o'clock today. And I go, oh, that's not good. Or it's not up at 5 o'clock, it's up on that third day. You got until really midnight on delivery, but it's 3 days. So my question to them was, okay, and this is not new agents, these are experienced agents. And said, well, okay, well, how much is the option? Oh, it's $100. I said, okay, good. Okay, good. Okay, you can't get to it and your client's going to lose their option, right? Yes. I said, okay, do you have $100 in your account? This is a personal question, but do you? Yes. I said, okay, go and get a money order. Go and get a money order for your client in order to, their mistake doesn't cost them having an option period. And then deliver it to their office and get somebody, I don't care who's sitting at the front desk or who it is, get somebody to receipt it. And if nobody's there, then you're going to have a talk with the agent about if they're not available, then you're gonna have to go and drop it off at the house for the sellers and get a receipt from the people saying that they delivered it, that you delivered it timely, so that your client has that option. Sometimes we have to get creative, and no get too creative, but it shouldn't be a check with your name on it. If someone comes to the office, well, in the olden days, when someone came to the office and needed a receipt, option receipted, I would get the check and I would look to see whose name's on the check. And if it wasn't the buyer or the seller, I'm saying, I'm sorry, but I'm not able to accept this check. Now, if they'd given me a money order or a certified check made out to the people, then that would be okay, because you want the people that are involved in the property delivering that money. So I would not receipt it for them if the agent had been, not available and asked me if I would do them that favor. Just know that, okay? All right. So never give the mail courier, anybody, other method of delivery of option money to the title company. But guess what? New things are coming up with a new contract, and guess who is supposed to be starting to get option money and earnest money? The title company directly. So I'm really curious what title has to say about that. This was on the red line version of the latest changes that they were thinking about doing that we may see in November. I mean, I think it would be super for us, where it would take the onus off of us and put it on title to accept the earnest and option checks. Don't you? I think that would be great. But it's just we've got a long way to go before we see if that's going to happen. I just never thought I'd ever see that, but it's pretty strange. So in the option, you're going to have a dollar amount in there, and within so many days of you can terminate. Usually I see between 7 and 10 days. Depends on, commercial, you'll see a lot larger for their time that they're looking at things. They have a different terminology. I forget what it's called now, but it's a lot longer. But typically 7 to 10 days, inspectors can get out there and give you an idea of what you're facing and what you need to negotiate. And I see anywhere from I see anywhere from $100 to I've seen $5,000 termination option. And you understand that the buyer never gets that option back, ever. And you make sure that you, on this third line from the bottom, the option fee will be credited to the sales price. Because if you're paying $5,000, you want to have that credit on there, don't you? Even if you're not going to get it back. So if your client wants to get out, as long as they've terminated and within the time period that's specified in this option period, then they would get their earnest money back. And that timeline, the deadline is 5 p.m. on the whatever day it is. So if the contract was signed today and you notified the other side, the other agent, that you signed it today, then tomorrow's day 1. And say on the 7th day from then, that's when their option period is up by 5 p.m. That means you have to have repairs or anything you're asking for negotiated with the other side. Or if you have not, you bought the property as is. It really is as is. You paid for an option and you're not even going to get it. So you want to make sure you get your clients out so they can at least get their earnest money out, even though they're going to lose their inspection money, they're going to lose their option money. They're going to, if they've already gotten a survey, if they've gotten anything like that, all that money is gone. But they can at least get their earnest money back and move on to another house if they have any money left. So there you have that. That's termination of option. Any questions about that? Because that's a biggie. Nope. Pretty crystal clear. I know you guys already know this. Option checks always made payable to the sellers. Earnest money is always made payable to the title. Option money is never returned to the buyers, or there is no option. If you return the money, you have no option out of anything. So you have to let them know, you write the check, you're never getting it back. but the option period allows for buyers to cancel for any reason or no reason. Oh, it looks cloudy. I think I'll cancel. Any reason they want, they can do that. So third day before 5 p.m. I think I got that big enough and highlighted and underlined. Don't forget to check the box in the body saying that the option fee will be credited toward the sales price. I typically don't see anything in number 24, consult an attorney before signing. Sometimes people have an attorney that looks paperwork over for them, but typically you don't see anything there. And if there's not one, don't invent one. This is reminding clients that buyers and sellers aren't attorneys and can't give legal advice. Then here, this is really important. I did not put this hard line around this box. It's that way in the contract because it's very, very important. That's the time, the date rather, that all the clock starts ticking on option period, financing period, any of that. So whoever has it last, fill in that date and year, and notify the other side that you have just executed, put the effective date in the contract here, and let them know that you will send that last final copied one over to them. Okay, just know that. And what was I going to say? Something. Do yourself a favor. Always let the seller sign last, because if the seller goes ahead and signs an offer but scratches through some other things, well, the other side could decide, okay, we'll just take it the way it was and sign it real quick, when actually the seller may be wanting to look at another offer that just came in. So have them initial and do other things, changes that they want on it, but don't have them sign it until everything is on it the way they want it. Then the seller who owns the property can maintain control over it. This happened recently, and is a situation where an agent sold a house to 2 different people. Not good, folks, not good. So be careful, okay? Just let your seller sign last so that he can maintain control over if he decides he's not going to sign it or not, or something comes up. So be sure that there's an effective date filled in. And once the effective date is filled in there, you never touch the contract again. I think you already all know that, but you never touch it. You only amend it. And we have amendments, and you can have as many amendments as you want. It doesn't matter. You're not limited to a certain amount of amendments to amend things. Just make sure that when you're amending something that you've already agreed to, that you're not saying that this, unless you mean it, that this supersedes the previous amendment or something. Just make sure it's clear that this is in addition to the previous amendments agreed to. Next, we have page 9. Okay, page 9 is the broker information. This is really important. Okay, so everybody knows, pretty much, that if you represent the buyer, you're going to be on the left-hand side. If you represent the seller, you're going to be on the right-hand side. But if you're intermediary, you're both going to be on the right side, right? So what you'd have is Keller Williams Realty, and the license number that we use is 492214. I should just go ahead and fill these out so y'all have that. Oh, that's a good idea. And then buyer only as buyer's agent would be checked. Your name and your license number goes there. I'm the license supervisor. You put my name and my license number. My license number, I asked for a real easy one to remember. They gave me 336633. How good is that? Okay, so that's my license number you can put in there. And then our address and your email address. But if you represent the seller, then you're going to be over on the right-hand side with that same information, but you're going to say seller only, a seller's agent, and fill in this part just to listed associate's email address, just to that part, just to that little bit right here. But now we're such a big company and we're such a big market center, and we right now are intermediary with Southwest, and some other locations. And there may be some more changes coming up before too long in addition. But right now we're intermediary with the ones that I've listed down, I think the next page. Yeah. If both agents work for any of these KW locations, then it's intermediary. If Gene Grubb is the broker, then we're intermediary. So we go back up here. And so if it's intermediary, then if both agents belong under Gene Grubb, then you'd have the listing information here. Then you'd have the buying information down here. And the same thing with the licensed supervisor. If it's Northwest Market Center, it'd be the same. If it's Southwest, then the supervisor there would be Linda Ramsey. So don't sweat that. That other side can fill out those details. But that explains who we're intermediary with. Listing broker has agreed to pay other broker blank % of the total sales price. Typically, we fill that in. What does that doesn't do anything for anything though. Really, the amount that's agreed upon is in the MLS, and that's what counts. So whatever's in the MLS, that counts for the what's going to be paid. If there's some other agreement that you have come to agreement that you're going to get a less percentage or something because you've negotiated something better for your client or whatever, then you would need to get another agreement signed. And that's an agreement between brokers. And that's going to say that the new commission is this for this one transaction. So that's that. Just know where you belong on that page. So that tells you who we're intermediary with, and that could change a little bit coming pretty soon. If different commission is being offered, blah, 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 registration between brokers, and there's the number for that document. So I tried to put all the numbers in that I could. And don't forget that if it's intermediary, you have to have that intermediary notice, relationship notice, TXR 1409. I've got that on there too. And that just has to be signed. Then here you have the option fee receipt spot here, and you can read that. I'm really adamant about not dropping it off of the title company. Earnest money receipt, there's a place that has a little information on that. And then the contract receipt, that's when you haven't gotten earnest or option, but you want to drop it off and let title be working on it. They can just they've received the contract that's already been fully negotiated. Okay. And basically, additional earnest money, I hardly ever see that because you don't really touch this after you've executed it. You hardly ever see that. I don't even know why they have that on there, but that if it's needed, there it is. If they're splitting it up, I guess, to pay or something. And then we're done. Now, you know, more than 90%, and I'd say probably 95% of the agents writing contracts because you know what goes in each blank. Now, people say, why do you just teach the 1 to 4? Because that is the one that's probably used 90% of the time. There are other contracts. And if you know the basics of this one, you're going to be able to know how to fill out the others. Any that you don't know how to fill out, let me get this away. I want to see your smiling faces again. Stop share. Yay, there you are. Okay. Any that you don't know, all you need to do is send me, scan it, email it to me. Don't make me go and looking for it in command. Please don't make me do that. Don't make me do that. Scan it, send it to me. I'll look it over for you. And then we can, I'll tell you if there's something that I see that just jumps out that's missing or is incorrect or something. Because I'm here for you. I'm here to help protect you. And I'll do it to the best of my ability. And you know how to reach me. I want you all to take down my cell number. I've never given my cell number out before all this craziness has come up, but now we all work working from home. So it's 512-638-7400. Hi, Eugene. It's good to see you. You haven't gone on your trip yet. Good to see you. Anybody that has any questions that doesn't have to do with contracts or anything else that you'd like to ask of me, I'm going to stop recording